Welcome back to Season 2 of In the Middle of It, a podcast about participation culture.
Join us out in the field as we explore what it really takes to grow participation culture in communities.
I'm Sissy Rock.
I'm Lucy Mary Mulholland.
And I'm Duncan Matthews. In the Middle of It, Season 2 starts now.
Let's go.
5 principles that we've been using to guide our work. Principles, of course, are ideas that are applied and then stuff happens because of it.
Great idea, but let's just shelve that and actually wait and see, is there energy bubbling up in the community from the...
All Western thinking is linear and all non-Western thinking is non-linear. Last time, Sissy, we were talking about our aversion to professionalising community development, some of the skills we're identifying for our community workers, and, you know, the difference between living in or parachuting in, what it means to be an insider or an outsider in the community. Today, we're going to talk about...
Well, these 5 principles that we've been using to guide our work. Principles, of course, are ideas that are applied and then stuff happens because of it.
Did you Google that?
No, that's not. That's my own definition.
Okay, great. Let's be clear. Are we referencing Google or Sissy Rock today?
It's just Sissy Rock today. But I reckon there's one principle that we've paid a little less attention to. Can you guess which one I think it is?
I think it's speed and variety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe we could focus in on that today to start off with.
And so, Lucy Mary, why was that? Why did you think of speed and variety as the one we've paid least attention to?
Oh, good question. Perhaps the most practical version, whereas the others are a lot more philosophical in a way. They open up a lot more kind of dialogue and different ways of interpreting, whereas speed and variety is quite directive and practical. So maybe we haven't gone there yet.
But also, speed and variety is talking about having a variety of things that people can participate in and building momentum, doing that quickly. And I think that that's only something in a way that starts in the middle of the pilot. You can't have speed and variety at the very beginning because you're working out relationships and trying to think about what should be done in your testing stuff. But we're coming to the point now where perhaps speed and variety becomes a bit of the thing that we're monitoring or that we're thinking about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think you're right. It takes time to get up to that momentum.
Speed and variety really is the numbers game that, while we're not playing it, we have to play it a little bit. Because if we don't. Okay.
Well, no, it's not about numbers.
It's not about numbers.
I think in one of the other episodes we talked about having something that takes your fancy. And so the variety bit is about making sure these things that take everyone's fancy. And the speed bit is not taking 3 months to do that thing that took everyone's fancy. You know, I meet you and you go, oh, hey, I've got a whole lot of lemons in my backyard. And I go, oh, let's make some preserved lemons together. And you go, yeah, how do we book the community centre? And that's done within a week, not 3 months later you come back and go, oh no, sorry, all the lemons have gone now.
They're rotten.
Yeah,
the birds got them.
Yeah.
I think what I like about speed and variety is it orientates us towards action, or it's like focus on doing it rather than doing something high quality or taking a really long time to do it. And that's where the magnet effect pulls us to, if we're going to put something out into the world, we only want it to be out in the world in its best possible form. Lots of people have that, you know, perfectionism or whatever you want to call it, whereas speed and variety says actually it's less important to be perfect. It's more important to be out there.
Yeah, and I think it also shows that we're working with this, jargony word, but an iterative process. So that idea of we're just going to do the smallest possible version of this, test it, see what happens. If there's energy and will, maybe we'll put a bit more energy into it and make the next version of it, but not sort of, as you said, forming this perfectly formed plan in your meeting room and then launching, but actually just getting out and learning as you go what's working, what people are excited about, what's falling flat that we just need to let go.
Yeah, and if 2 people come, that's cool.
Yeah. I think we've seen that in Glenview. That Charles started a walking group, and I think it was just 1 or 2 people in the beginning, and slowly over time, he's kept up that really regular rhythm.
One of the very first activations that I started doing, ahakoa he iti, he pounamu, little often and varied, was a walking group. It was kind of a starting point for me. Once I understood little often and varied, I was like, okay, what's something very simple and easy that I can activate in our community? So, Glenview Walkers was created about 1.5 years ago. So we've utilised the Manga Tukutuku Gully Stream, a very important piece of the landscape. And it's really just a 15-minute stroll through the neighbourhood. We've been doing it once a fortnight for over a year and a half. And I think for the first 6 months, it was just myself.
And it's slowly growing, and now there's one woman that attends that who they think is, someone who's got ideas of wanting to do stuff, organise her own thing. So they're starting to have conversations with her. So it's just been quite a slow grow. But the fact that they just got it up and running quite quickly is perhaps linked to that principle.
One of the ways we've been calling speed and variety little and often. It's kind of the same side of the different coin. But what I like about little and often is, to your example, Lucy Mary, of the walking group, is that it is little, but it's often. And by often, I think we actually mean consistent. And that's an area where we've really perhaps identified a need to be a little bit more focused in our encouragement and our direction, being consistent ourselves and modelling that for our weavers on the ground, where that consistency can be difficult to achieve when this week it's school holidays and next week there's a trip or the school hall is booked out, and then the week, like that consistency can actually be quite hard to achieve in the chaos which is life.
I think Johnny talked about this too, and I know we've played this part of his recording about the 3 lunar cycles.
It takes 90 days of observation, so 3 lunar cycles, and that requires us to do 2 things. We go and do an observation hikoi, like a 30 or 40-minute walk every morning, so he has to do it at the same time every day for 90 days in the same location. What you start to see over those 3 lunar cycles is patterns and cycles emerging. Even right down to you start seeing the same people every morning at that time walking their dog, and so you start to say hello and you start to connect, and over time you start to see trees and things that might be all just green, but you start to appreciate the different textures of green. And in a sense, what we're looking for is, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel outside me and around me, and also within me?
There's something in there about finding the rhythm of your community, and so what little and often means in the rhythm of your community. Some communities might want something happening weekly. Some it might be 3 weekly, some it might be once a quarter. So, thinking of your community as a living, breathing thing, and what is it in your community that needs to be fed? What's the rhythm? Where can this happen? And who do you want to bring into the tract towards it? So it helps you get that idea of variety, speed, little, often.
So again, we're not saying there's a set pattern or tempo. We're saying there's that need to attune to the place first, and then you can start to see where are those opportunities for the little and often and speed and variety.
Yeah, I'm thinking about all the people I've heard that, I've got a friend who's been going to the same men's group for 15 years on a Tuesday night, or someone who always goes to their yoga class, or a book group that have been meeting. And these are all very different things, and the same person probably wouldn't go to all 3 of them, but there's enough spice there for different people to pick up, and they become part of your life. Like you feel a bit lost if you're not doing this or, going here.
How do you find that sits with the idea of common denominator activities, where you're trying to get something that's actually one thing that's bringing in a variety of people rather than a variety of things serving a variety of people?
The idea around a common denominator is that it will bring about difference, right? And they've already worked out what they think common denominator activities are.
1,
Cooking,
2,
gardening,
3,
repairing,
4,
Eating.
And so we've seen things like skill shares, cooking clubs, really holding that space where lots of different people come.
What stands out to me about those common denominator activities is, in the age of the internet, where any type of whatever you want to look at is instantly available to you online, whether it's Netflix feeding you suggestions, or you're scrolling through TikTok, or still people will come out for something like cooking, when you can sit at home and scroll through people cooking on your Instagram or watch a cooking show without actually having to cook or talk to anyone.
Is the idea that you bring about people who are different so that they mix and get to know each other, and then they might go off and do a little small something?
Yeah, so maybe it's an and of like having these diverse gathering spaces at, say, like a big community soup or a crop swap or something, and then having all these little offshoot variety small things like a gardening group or a walking group or a raranga class that kind of offshoot from these common denominator gatherings.
Yeah, or I wanted to learn how to crochet. Oh, yeah, I can help you. Actually, Marie once tried to teach me. I'm not very good. But this idea idea that the participation might not be a crochet club. It might be you and Marie in your homes crocheting, but that's something that you haven't done with each other before and you didn't know that you had that in common because you belong to these totally different groups. I think that this is the theory, but in practice, what have we been seeing? So in Hoon Hey, what do you think in practice you've seen around the speed, variety, small, often type stuff?
So they've set up a parents group based on what they're hearing in the community. So that's become kind of a regular pattern, very simple, basic thing. They've just, in terms of speed, they've managed to put together like a little spring market at the local community centre, which incredibly fast, how quick it came together. And again, just low-key, casual vibes. But that was a real speed thing I saw with those guys.
And that might be one of those moments where we might never know, but some of the stall holders might have talked to each other or someone might have bumped into each other in a stall. And
they've told us some of these stories actually that, one, they met someone at that event who got excited about wanting to set up a Frisbee golf club in the local park and they're going to maybe support him to do that. They had 2 stall holders, meeting for the first time and teaming up that they want to do a market again together and share a table again next time. Someone else at that market they talked to said that they really want to do this again, but can we do like a garage sale, kind of car boot sale type market? So they're going to organise that. Yeah, there was quite a few little offshoots from
the person who suggested it's going to help organise it.
That's it. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. They're going to lead it and the Weavers are just going to support them to do it. And one of the stall holders at that market was a woman who met a neighbour at the parents group for the first time, and this neighbour encouraged her to sell her wares at the local market, and she'd never had the confidence to do that before. So there's all these little ripples that come from sort of event to event. But yeah, as you said, because things are happening quickly, often these conversations are happening and these ripples are occurring and things are moving.
What about up in Wellsford?
So up in Wellsford, one of the things we've seen is a cooking club, people getting together, taking in turns to be head chef and kind of offering a recipe and everyone playing a different role in the kitchen, chopping vegetables or stirring pots and then coming together at the end and eating food together. Crop swap. Not a huge amount of people showed up, but the people that did show up really wanted to see this happen again and are willing to be part of helping organise the next one. So that's another thing. It seems like it's going to have a bit of momentum and ongoing regularity.
Yeah, because we don't want to romanticise things. Like if anyone was listening and thinking, oh, yes, let's do a crop swap and 100 people will come. Like sometimes you do something and only 2 or 3 people come. But from that 2 or 3 people, they go, I've got a bit of energy. And everyone says, yeah, I'll go and bring a friend. And it might take a while to establish.
Yeah, and I think it's similar in Glenview. They're doing this kind of regular throwback games, kind of doing old school, in the park, frisbees and hopscotch and chatterings, that kind of stuff. And yeah, again, small turnout, not heaps of people came, but they met one woman who lives locally on the edge of the park who had the conversations with, and it sounds like she's, again, like a potential person who might want to get involved in leading the next one or doing something similar. And I think even these small things, if they draw out those keen people that we talked about, there's real value there because it's going to have that ongoing ripple and momentum rather than just being, as we've seen before, a really awesome big event that's big and flashy and has lots of great photos from it, but again requires a lot of energy to keep moving. It doesn't have its own momentum.
I know that Marie says as soon as you get a bouncy castle, it's the bouncy castle effect. But I did notice he was a bouncy castle.
Bouncy castle. Yeah, this has been a really funny point of discussion with our Hoon Hey team. They kind of went back and forth with it quite a few times, and they thought in the end, we want to do it because we think we can do it in a way that encourages participation culture. So they put it in, but they actively were around that space, making connections between parents, getting conversations going between parents who are there waiting for their kids who are bouncing on the bouncy castle. So I think it opened up for me this idea of it's not the what, it's the how.
And that just goes to prove there are actually no rules. Now, can I test us? This is a testing of us. So one of our principles is relationship before ideas. So where did all these ideas you've just been talking about come from?
So the market that they did in Hoon Hey, that came from just having conversations at Hot Shop around the block, having conversations at the school gate amongst parents, and I think sort of just through other informal networks that they discovered that in Hoon Hey there's lots of people with a side hustle, and they thought that was quite unique. That was something they discovered about the area. So when they came up with this idea of a spring market, it was in response to that in a way that they knew that there was lots of people in the area that might want to sell their wares.
And that turned out to be true.
Matt, they filled up their stalls so quickly to the point where they had to then say to stallholders, you need to share a table with somebody else, which they thought was great because then they get to meet other stallholders and build relationships. So it was hugely popular. And I went down and checked it out. And right from even before they opened the market, it was absolutely full. And I think what was nice about it as well is where it's at the Hoonay Community Centre. It's really small. Like the community centre is really little. It's just got a little backyard. Probably only space for about 6 gazebos in the backyard and this little bouncy castle. So it had that kind of intimate grassroots feel, barbecue out the front. It was still an event, but it felt local. And they had their blackboard out the front, meet your neighbours. That's all it was. You know, it wasn't this kind of the logo and we're putting on this thing for you. It was just come meet your neighbours at this market.
That really feels like it's proof that if you get your idea out of the relationships, it's going to have traction because it didn't come from just 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, it's actually going to resonate with the community.
So should we be a bit testy on ourselves and say, what do we think about the crop swap? We've already said it doesn't have to be a lot of people that turned up, but where did that idea come from?
I think it came from 2 places. One, I think the weavers in other locations were experimenting with crop swaps. So I think there was a little bit of borrowing ideas or kind of getting inspiration from other groups.
And who doesn't do that?
Yeah, of course. I think as well, the other thing was just that because Wellsford is kind of a semi-rural place, a lot of people have chickens or someone bought home kill. You know.
And I think it just shows the juxtaposition that sometimes you have to model an idea. You have to take something and put it out there. And it might take longer to catch on, or it might have just been lucky. Who knows? But I think it is when the people of Wellsford are listening, when they're out there creating these opportunities, because we are having to do interventions. We might have to go along to things that are already established, but actually down in Hoonay, they did the chalk around the block. They go to the school gates just to hear what's happening. When there's enough of that, there should be a sense of an idea coming out of those relationships. You can't push it too hard, right, if you haven't got the relationships.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you try and push an idea too quickly, you do get that instant feedback where no one shows up or people show up and they participate, but they're sort of there maybe out of obligation. And then after that first 1 or 2, they kind of drift off. I think we've used the metaphor a lot in Wellsford of talking about seeds and soil, where we talk about, an idea being like a seed. And has it actually got the soil to grow in at the moment? And sometimes, seeds might sit on the shelf for a really long time. Great idea, but let's just shelve that and actually wait and see, is there energy bubbling up in the community from this?
And that's about the context, right? Everything happens in a context.
As part of what we're trying to look at in this project is the readiness or the conditions within the community, who we chose and why. A few episodes ago, we talked about they had to be urban locations rather than rural because we think there's a certain level of readiness, a certain number of conditions that need to be present for this to be able to work. And if it's too big an area, if it's too spread out, or if there's too much community already, too much community is not a bad thing, but that's not the right condition for participation culture to flourish.
Just as you're saying that, I'm thinking about all the things that sort of need to be happening at the same time to create the perfect conditions. And sometimes you don't have the perfect conditions, so you've got to adapt and you've got to add more of something in.
Yeah, that's a good point. It takes me back to what we were saying, that ideas before relationships thing of that chicken and egg. Like sometimes we might need to seed a lot more in terms of ideas to make spaces where relationships might start to grow, and then organic ideas can come from that. Or actually there's heaps of ideas here already. We need to really step back and hold ourselves back and just listen and support from behind.
And I kind of like that we've been talking about Wellsford and Hoonay Rowley. And then in between both of them is Glenview. And I feel like that's had quite a different vibe.
Well, I think we were particularly conscious of bringing a UK model into Aotearoa, and that repeats all sorts of unhelpful behaviours from decades and centuries past. But we were really lucky, Lucy Mary, for you to introduce us to Johnny Freeland and his binocular approach and moving from square thinking to circle thinking. It's really created a bit of a different space for some of our weavers. In some locations, it's given our weavers a framing or a bit of a starting point to uncover how they're working within Te Tiriti or within Aotearoa. Whereas for others, it's really unleashed something which was already there.
I wonder whether in Glenview, it's given me the framing to see what the people of Glenview wanted to do. I only really want to talk from my own learning. And the thing that I noticed about the binocular vision is, yes, you start with squares and you move into circular kind of Western thinking and Te Ao Māori, but you're looking through both those lenses and creating a third something. And to me, that creates a lot of space to not have to be one or the other, that there's room for everything, but you've got to create room for everything.
Yeah.
And that's probably the little edge for me, is that when there was this launch party and I was sort of like, oh, a launch party.
Sounds a lot like a bouncy castle.
Yeah, I wasn't against it, but I did notice in myself, oh, a launch party? Liking a soiree myself, I'm not against that. But when I realised that this was about getting permission and awhi support for the project, that it was a formal thing with the kingitanga and it wasn't a launch party like my worldview of a launch party, I could hold both those things in my sights, and it gave me more understanding about the ways that things were being done and why the weighting, why the importance had to be put on things that weren't from my worldview, but I could see them from both worldviews.
I think I had a similar experience with thinking about, in that principle, speed and variety, that word speed, and holding different versions of time, that we're holding a sense of linear time. We need to move things forward and we've got a certain limited amount of time. And that what I was seeing in that launch event and some of the other ways that's come to life is a sense of more non-linear time. That kind of, sort of being in that more kind of, Johnny talks about the wā space, being in that kind of timeless space.
Te wā is a Māori concept of time and space, so it's almost where sequential time doesn't exist, whereas in a Māori concept, te wā, it's like a long pause, if you like. And often one of the clashes in that engagement space is around not engaging with community time.
I was just thinking time really is a construct. When you have daylight savings, you realise, well, what is the time?
Yeah.
What is the point in getting up an hour?
Yeah, but it's like, really, what is the time? And it's like actually just something that's constructed. And when you remove that and you start saying, it will take us as long as it takes to get to where we need to go next, rather than in 10 days, we should have achieved A, B, and C.
It helps reinterpret our role somewhat from we've got to drive a team to get to these deliverables to, it's actually our job to communicate back to the people who gave us money or gave us a timeline. We actually then sit in that middle space between what's happening on the ground, and we need to be able to hold the space that is there rather than just push through with the top-down deadlines, even though we were the ones who suggested the deadlines.
Yeah, but we could say that about ourselves. Like,
of course.
the funder has given us money, but then we become the funder when we contract. So we've got to kind of give ourselves our own advice.
Yes. Yeah. We're working through and taking our advice.
So you think we are
Gently.
taking our own advice?
Well, slowly.
Yeah.
You don't think we are?
I don't know. Like sometimes I feel it's a little bit of a internalized battle with myself.
Taking our own advice maybe feels like there's a right or wrong. I think we're working our way through what it means for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you said of internalized battle, I've felt that as well. The big theme that's come up a lot in this, right, is this kind of holding the tension between two things that seem paradoxical. And I think that's been my experience, is trying to hold that sense of, I'm not just going to be in that timeless space where everything's fluid and free floating and we're letting things just move, but to be able to hold that and hold the linear time as well, and then dance with them. Like, I don't know, hold them in creative tension, and then see what emerges from that honours both of those versions of time. And, sometimes when we're in conversation with a community member, we might be in that more timeless space where we're just seeing where it goes, letting things unfold, and then maybe an idea presents itself, and we might then flip into that more linear time. We're like, right, when do you want to try this out? And suddenly we're thinking, hey, we could do this next week. And we've flipped into that linear space, and then we might flip back into, it sort of feels like a dance between the two.
For me, maybe some people haven't even got hold of the fact that there is non-linear time and linear time, and they're only operating from there being linear time.
Right.
For me, it's about being able to appreciate that there's more than just one way of viewing the world that I think this binocular framing gives. And I think that that's making some of the things that have been invisible before more visible. But that doesn't necessarily mean it makes it easier, because sometimes when things become more visible, there's even more to deal with.
There's more complexity.
Yeah.
Like, how do I hold all this?
Yeah.
It's like lots of things you have to learn or come to understand and apply when you're first coming to grips with something. can feel quite complicated, or once you've come to understand and you've integrated into your practice a little bit, then it becomes more natural and you understand the benefits of holding both worldviews.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest and say I don't think I can hold both worldviews. Sometimes it's very invisible to me, and I get hold of the fact that it's invisible. And then the next step is trying to work out, well, what are my privileges that mean that I can go through life like this and not even need to think about A, B, C, and D. I think lots of us will be in this, we're not enlightened beings yet. And that's actually okay.
Yeah. I think this is what really excites me about working with communities of place, because there's something about when you're in a place, you naturally start to hold more of the complexity. You can't just see the place at just the social level. You kind of got to be aware of the politics in the place. And like you said, and the different privileges at play and the different patterns in this place. And in my experience, like a way of holding complexity at a scale that we can actually manage. If you try and go too big, it's just too much. But down at that scale of sort of neighborhood or place, you can actually start to hold all that difference in this sorry, I lost my train of thought. But
it's good because your train of thought has made me think about, there's all these people living in communities, and it's the space between them, that interpersonal or, relational or cohesion space in between them that we're actually working with. And to do that, we have to be able to not make people good or bad. We have to be able to hold differing opinions in the same space so that we can bring people together and we can value everyone's contribution.
Without homogenizing it or sanitizing it it's like holding all that messiness, which I think you can only do at a certain scale. We can't take on, one person can't hold global messiness, for example, but we might be able to hold neighborhood messiness.
That's great.
Okay.
Cool.
Episode 5.
Done.
But in episode 6, what are we going to grapple with?
I think that's really our episode on what are we hoping to learn? What are some of the challenges we've come across these last few months that we just don't know about yet?
So we're in the middle of it. These are the learnings so far. These are the things we might want to learn. These are the things that we've given up learning.
I'd better take some notes.
See you later.
See you later.
Thanks goes to 104.6 Planet FM Community Access Radio Auckland for their excellent recording studio and guidance in producing this podcast. The music is Pistoriosis by Shane Ivers of soundmanmusic.com, Mal Joannison for bringing together draft episodes, Mish Maskol for their audio engineering expertise, and our weavers Libby, Jalen, Charles, Tui, Nay, Holly, Lisa, Ray and Carol.
With additional music by Snake and Bongo and Afrobot. Final sound production and mix by Barney Duncan.